Welcome to Coastside Poetry. Thanks to those of you who've zoomed in and those who are watching on YouTube. We meet either physically or virtually on the second Tuesday of every month to celebrate spoken poetry. I'm Diane Lee Moomey, and Steve Long and I are your hosts this evening. Our featured poet event is being recorded and streamed live onto YouTube as we speak. So anyone can look at it later. We'll be posting the link on our website, www.coastsidepoetry.org. This evening, we welcome Marin Poet Laureate Emerita Rebecca Foust. Rebecca's new book, Only, is forthcoming from Four-Way Books in fall 2022. She's the author of 3 chapbooks, including The Unexploded Ordnance bin, winner of the 2018 Swan Scythe Chapbook Award, and 4 books, including Paradise Drive, winner of the Press 53 Award for Poetry. Recognitions include the 2020 Pablo Neruda Prize for Poetry, the C.P. Kafavi and James Hurst Poetry Prizes, a Marin Poet Laureateship from 2017 to 19, and fellowships from the Frost Place, Hedgebrook, MacDowell, and Sewanee. Recent poems are in the Cincinnati Review, the Hudson Review, Narrative, Plowshares, Poetry, and elsewhere. You can find out more about her at her website, RebeccaFoust.com. Please welcome Rebecca Foust.
Thank you so much, Diane, for that wonderful introduction. And thanks to you and Steve for hosting this series. I've appeared for you once before. We did a really fun kind of workshop on the sonnet, as I recall. But I know I've heard a lot of great things about the series, and I'm really thrilled to have the chance to read for you tonight. I'm going to be reading mostly poems from my new book. It doesn't officially release until September, but it is available now. And I'd like to invite all of you to my book launch at Book Passages on November 12th. If you're in town, I'd love to see you there. So my plan is to read, maybe 7 or 8 poems, maybe a few more from this book, and then read a new poem or 2 if there's time. And then I guess we have the open mic after that, and then I come back at the end and read 1 more poem. Is that right? Okay, so I'll read the title poem last. So I'm going to start with a poem that was in that, it was the title poem for that chapbook that Diane mentioned, called The Unexploded Ordnance bin. Now, you may not know what an unexploded ordnance bin is, but it is a thing. It's a real thing. I saw one for the first time on Wellfleet in Cape Cod at the police station. It was a big metal bin, and it turns out on both coasts there's a problem with unexploded munitions that get found on the beach. And these are from Navy target practice, from munitions dumps, all sorts of things. And I don't know how they handled them in the West Coast, but the way they handled them in Wellfleet is you brought them to the police station. So as soon as I saw that sign on that bin, I thought, what a great metaphor, right? So that's the name of this poem, The Unexploded Ordnance Bin. Our son found the hollow shell, snub-nosed and finned, and looking like an Acme cartoon bomb, where we raked for clams. He wanted to keep it, and we wanted to let him. Even the old oyster man wanted to let him. But we'd read about the shell found and kept for 3 weeks by the Oregon boy before the powder dried and it went off. We took a few minutes to snap photos of our son, like any ordinary boy then, putting the shell under his sister's pillow and pretending to launch it at the foods that made him gag. At the police station, the desk sergeant crooked a thumb toward the dune with its big metal bin and warning sign. Once a month, he said, we set him off, and it really lights the place up. It's too small to be seen, the gene causing autism. But I imagine it anyway, with snub nose and fins and powder waiting to dry, first words blown off and away like the fingers of that Oregon boy, whose mom's grief I used to feel safe from, who let her son keep his bomb in ignorance or in faith, strong as my own caution that led in the end to the same spectacular dismemberment of the future. And I wonder, what would it look like, the bin for safe disposal of genes that some have said can ruin children? And I think maybe it's my own body, or rather the body without children, or rather the body that's lucky, or belonging to someone still living in ignorance and improbable faith. Or maybe the bin is the world when it was young, and to be human was all promise and radiance, unwinding dawn mud flats into long, shining ribbons, pink as a newborn baby's gums. And elsewhere, a family in a warm, illuminated room is eating steamed clams, or just any ordinary dinner, as if it weren't all going to blow all to hell any second. All those bright dreams lit up like tracer fire over the dark dunes, like the Perseids, only not at all like the Perseids. So I'm sure I don't have to tell this crowd that the Perseids are a wonderful meteor shower that is happening now. And with any luck, after this reading, I'm going to go lie on the dock with a lot of insect repellent and see a couple of them. I'm broadcasting from the land of the Ojibwe, by the way, in northern Minnesota in the Boundary Waters. So it's really exciting to be able to reach people in California this way. The next poem I'm going to read is called Abeyance. And it's an epistolary poem. It's in the form of a letter, and the epigraph is "Letter to my transgender daughter." Abeyance. I made soup tonight with cabbage, chard, and thyme, picked outside our back door. For this moment, the room is warm and light, and I can presume you safe somewhere. I know the night lives inside you. I know we made mistakes, dividing you and hiding you from you inside. I know a girl like you was knifed last week, another set aflame, and that these things happen all the time. I know I lack the words, or all the words I say are wrong. I know I'll call and you won't answer, and still I'll call. I want to tell you, you are loved with all I have, recklessly and with abandon, the way the cabbage in my garden near inverts itself, splayed to catch each last ray of sun, and how the feeling furling in only makes the heart more dense and green. Tonight, it seems like something one could bear. Guess what? Your dad and I finally figured out Pandora, and after all those years of silence, our old music fills the air. It fills the air, and somehow here, at this instant, and for this instant only, perhaps 3 bars, what I recall equals all I feel, and I remember all the words. So as you can tell, some of the poems in my book are inspired by my, by my parenting experience. And I have very interesting children, and they are endlessly inspiring to me for my writing. This next poem is called Echo, and it was written at the gorge in Trucas, New Mexico. The stone fit my hand. Like any promise, it had weight and a hollow you could drink water from or fill with sand. I tucked it inside my vest, baby born in a sling, that damp weight on my chest. The stone was cool and calm, and I felt something flow from me into its hollow. The womb is a semi-permeable membrane and an echo, a voice that hears what it calls. You made me while I made you. Nothing is owed. I came to the canyon rim and saw how best to carry you. I let the stone go. So another group of poems in the book is concerned with climate change. And I'm writing even more of those poems now. And this next one was written after the terrible Paradise wildfire in California in 2018. And it was chosen by Kaveh Akbar for the 2020 Pablo Neruda Prize. Blackout. When the lights went out, a soft silence settled over everything like fine, heavy ash. We stopped talking, newly aware of the candles lit on the table, the edge of everything blurred in a way that felt beautiful. We turned off our phones to conserve the charge. That was before the towers went down. And then we looked up from them into each other's faces. We had not looked before, not that night. The candlelight cast different shadows, sculpting ridges and plains we had not known were there. Small sounds became acute. A plinking faucet somewhere, crickets, calls of owls. We lowered our voices, exposed in darkness, in a way we were never exposed in the light. Is it wishful thinking to remember we were kinder with one another then? There was fear, yes, elemental fear, mineral fear of the dark and the fire raging 30 miles to the north. There was fear of showing our fear and of showing a certain lack of gratitude that things were not yet quite dire. There was the car's gas tank on empty and the go bag not yet packed. The single corridor out of Marin already unspooling a bright red mylar ribbon of traffic through the dark hills, and above them, the stars we'd forgotten, usually masked by the streetlights, but tonight bright, cold, unperturbed, still there, throwing fire at our eyes from light years away. How funny to measure distance with time. Or maybe not funny at all. It takes 5 minutes to make the freeway in no traffic, an hour or more during rush hour to quit Marin. The precise distance between life and death, or was for the cars caught in the hell called paradise, sparks arcing like sequins across windshields, steering wheels too hot to touch, flames walling both sides. Some people died in their cars, or running from them, or in their beds or barns to let the livestock out. Moments before, be sitting at a table like this one in the new dark, looking around at each other in wonder seeing something new and listening, really listening. Thank you. So I had the great luck to be able to serve as Marin County Poet Laureate from 2017 to 2019, and I was really torn about doing that gig because Trump had just gotten elected, and I knew I could not keep my mouth shut. And so I pretty much told them I can only do this if I can be myself and be honest and do whatever theme I want for my platform. And they supported me. And my platform was Poetry as Sanctuary. And I meant that in the larger spiritual sense, but I also very much meant it in the specific sense of California being a sanctuary state. And I tried to sponsor immigrants as much as I could. I'm very close friends with an immigrant family. The son's name is Javier Zamora. By the way, he's launching his book at Book Passage on September 11th, and it's a memoir called Solito about his trek across the Sonoran Desert at the age of 9. So I'm really looking forward to that. But anyway, I'm going to read a poem for him. But before I do that, I'm going to set it up by reading this poem called Election Returns 2016. The way up the mountain was like always, switchbacks and more switchbacks. The trail rising through redwoods arced over a silence rinsed with new rain. We were in an emerald world of fern and mist, and moss trembled with tiny glass beads. It was dusk and late fall. We knew what would happen and in what order. We'd be made to suffer for a few hours before reaching the summit, then would emerge above the fog. Yes, there were portents. Maple leaves pasting the trail with bloody handprints, evergreens brittle and brown, a few manzanita oddly in bloom, lake water like pewter, faint reek of smoke we hoped came from a controlled burn. We went on walking the trail by memory that also held rain after drought and wild iris massed like stars. We walked till we came upon what was left of the deer, a white basket of rib cage that looked almost human, matted fur, tags of torn flesh. On the way down, it would all become clear. But even then, we understood. It was a fresh kill, and the cougar was close. We looked around to see who among us was prey, and we understood then what would happen. So this next poem is dedicated to Javier Zamora, and it's called Sit With Me. And there was a lot of prey during that last term, but the immigrants were a major source of predation. This is called Sit With Me. Sit again with me by the fire to debate the placement of commas and italics and the meanings of words as if the world were at stake in this warm, bright room, secured by a heavy door with a good lock, on a street, in a block, no ICE agent would dare on. And that for a moment, what matters is nothing more than the words on this page. Here in this room, we believe in choosing the right words in the right order, and that it makes a difference, whether craven means crass or something more odious like openly indifferent to suffering. Even if both happen to apply, only one is precisely correct, and we believe that matters. After the election, a woman on the bus cried out while checking her phone. "Thank God," she said, "the bees are no longer going extinct. They've been taken off the endangered list." It was not long after that the EPA got shot down, and the word criminal was amended to mean children who escape into this country from earthquakes, machetes, and guns. So many children crossing those rivers. And last night, workers taken right out of the kitchen at Cavallo Point. But here in my neighborhood, the magnolias are unfolding large, creamy blooms with an abandon that brings to mind the words wanton and craven. Sit with me again and remind me words matter as much as the world. Remind me craven means not crass, but cowardly, even if both happen to apply to our president, and evil and immoral. And evil and immoral are almost always over the top in a poem. Tell me what each term means and does not mean, and what this particular 4-year term means to the father who worked here for 20 years and now must leave his family behind. And tell me how to parse a sentence that balances weeping with silence, children with criminal and abandon, and president with craven and crass and openly indifferent to suffering. Give me any meaning that makes any sense and will not allow the reader to choose or to turn away. So I'm going to close this section of poems from the book with a poem called The Dream of the Rude. And, I forgot to show you my book. And I'm so excited because I just literally found out 3 days ago that it got reviewed in Publishers Weekly, which this is my 7th book, and none of my prior books have ever been reviewed in Publishers Weekly. But not only that, it got a starred review, which I gather is a good thing. So I'm really thrilled about that. I'm really grateful to Four Way Books for picking up the book, and I'm so excited to see where they can take me with this book. But anyway, there are 2 poems in the book called The Dream of the Rude. It opens the book and it closes the book. And for those of you who don't know, The Dream of the Rude is a medieval poem by an anonymous poet. It's a Christian poem, and it's about a traveler that is walking along the road, and he comes across a tree, which turns out to be the rood, which is the medieval word for the true cross. And while he's watching this tree, it bleeds and then is covered with jewels or blooms or something. It undergoes an incredible transformation. So that piece of literature is really important to me because I went to a public high school where we had 2 curriculums, ag and general. I was general, and we didn't read stuff like that, much less analyze it. So that was like really the first piece of classical literature that I read with a critical eye and grappled with. So it's a really important poem for me. And the great thing about rude, that word for the true cross, is it has a lot of homonyms. It has a lot of words that sound like it but mean something different, which is a real strength if you happen to be, as I am in this case, writing a villanelle. Dream of the rude. You should follow your dream, whispered the rude young yoga instructor, earnest and bent on proving that pain could, at its heart, be good, and that I ached for more than this hardwood floor against my spine's misalignment. I'd signed up to follow it, my dream, but now I rued the day I'd moved to this crazy state, loaded with cord stack. The family tree felled by blood, smoke, and gin. Mom and Dad died years before they each died. Light was divided from light in every small pain, so I went west. Burnt was the dream shape of home, root, shaft, and crossbeam. In my first year of dead and no weather, I wanted winter. I pined for trees with no leaves and for any word spoken in tongues. Stand, she said, on your head, and it began to rain. Outside, upside down, a tree bled. I dreamt blurred red bud, the rude, pain-pierced light, a dead tree in luminous bloom. So I'm going to read, I forgot to track my time. Do I have time to read one short new poem before we move on to the open mic, or do you want me to stop here? Okay, so I'm going to read, the anniversary of September 11th is coming up, so I'm going to read a poem I wrote last fall in memory of September 11th, which, as if you get the poem, and I hope you will, you'll see that it was a near miss for me. I was very close to being on the plane that crashed into the World Trade Center. And the epigraph of this poem is that old 13th century proverb that goes like this: for one of a nail, a shoe was lost. For one of a shoe, a horse was lost. For one of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, a kingdom was lost. So the epigraph reads, for want of a nail, the rider was lost. And this is a sonnet, and it's called Missing American Airlines Flight 11 on 9/11. What if I had not forgotten the pectin? What if the beach plum jam had gelled in time for me to box up the 12 jars the day before my flight out of Logan? I'd have mailed the jam, August conserved in amber syrup perfection, back home as planned. I would not have paid the fee to delay my return, nor begun the canning again. I'd have gone to the airport, still believing that summer intact and secure in its sealed jars would land on my porch after my own return. But there'd have been no return then, no divine dispensation, no lost linchpin reversing the chain of causation so that this time the rider was saved. I'd have made that plain. So I think we're ready now for the next portion of the program. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for listening. This is the first time I've gotten to read the poems from this book. So this is a really big deal for me, and I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, this is so amazing. And I'm going to suggest that folks unmute now if they would like to say something. We'll take a few minutes.
Yes, but when you're so impressed that all you're doing is babbling, I'm not sure that there's
I know.
that much to say, you know?
Consider me babbling in an erudite way.
Yes, wonderful, Rebecca.
Blew
Thank
me
you
away.
so much.
Thank you.
I know you're going to hit us with something even harder at the end, so.
Those are such beautiful poems. I'm so happy to hear from you, Rebecca. And
it's so good
happy
to see you.
Zooming in from Minnesota, northern Minnesota.
Yeah,
we miss you in California, but we're so thrilled that you're thriving and your book is coming. And I can't wait to lay hands on your book. Thank you so much for tonight.
Yeah.
Beautiful reading.
I can't wait to see you in person. I will be back in California this fall, and I'll be there for a few months. So maybe we can read together or something.
I'd love that. I would so love that. Thank you for this beautiful reading tonight. Gorgeous work.
Thank you.
Rebecca, this is such powerful, beautiful work. I mean, and it's the kind of poems that just make me think and come back to them and think. So I really want to thank you for this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. And I'm so glad we're going to be neighbors.
Me too.
Yeah.
Rebecca, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. You know, I've been a devout follower of your work since I think it was 2015. You came to Los Gatos when Erica Goss was our poet laureate.
Oh,
And you were in the library there, and I think I read it open mic, but the thing is, I was just so taken by Paradise Drive. I think you just
oh,
published at that time. But since then, I've followed, and what a joy to hear you tonight, and all of the things you've done in between in those years. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you. I think I remember meeting you at that library. Yeah.
We had a little exchange about my daughter.
Right, right. I remember you.
I like, Rebecca, thank you for your reading so much. I really liked how much traveling there was in each poem from different events and scenes and how they all came together.
Oh, thank you.
Really, really fascinating. Pacing and turns. So I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I have done a lot of traveling
Rebecca,
the last few years.
Rebecca, that last poem, that was a close one.
Yeah.
And when did you realize that that airplane was basically a boat crossing the River Styx?
Well, it's a good story, actually. I was making this jam, and I was supposed to take that plane that morning. I can't remember now if it was the day before, but anyway, the jam didn't jam, and so I changed my flight. And I was on my way. I changed my flight to the afternoon, the same flight from Boston to San Francisco in the afternoon. And I was on my way to the airport, and I stopped at the post office to mail the bottles of jam, the jars of jam. And I was in line, and everybody was like ghastly pale. And they were talking about what sounded like a disaster movie. And that's the moment when I realized it was happening.
I see. Okay.
So at the moment that it was happening, I was in line at the post office trying to mail this stupid jam back. And then everyone just sort of went outside and sat on the curb. It was so bizarre. And the other thing that was bizarre is my husband, who is my ex now, but is the father of my children, and I love him dearly, was in Manhattan at Building 5 minutes before the plane hit. He was actually in a cab, and he saw it in his rear view window. So the sense of it coming very close was really strong. It was a dark day for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that jam and toast, I think each bite would be a celebration of your life, you know? And
I
that's
did end up
it's a wonderful
eating the
story.
jam. I don't think I could, but I did end up eating the jam.
I think I'd stop calling the jam stupid. I think it's wonderful jam.
Yeah,
Lifesaver jam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
making jam
name.
all summer, so I can appreciate that.
I can't even imagine coming that close.
You know, it turns out the sonic form was the perfect container for compressing the pressure of that experience.
Yes, yes, yes. Mm.
I think your guardian angels were working overtime to ruin the jam so you wouldn't get on the flight.
It did eventually gel. I just had to add more pectin. But yeah, that was close one, and I've written a lot about that. There was a poem about that in Paradise Drive. I wrote an essay about it. So anyway, that for some reason it just came back to me again, and that poem popped out last fall.
So where should we get the book, Rebecca? From Four-Way?
Well, you know, you can get it from Four-Way, IndieBound, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Book Passage will have it eventually because I'm launching there, but I'm not sure if they have it yet.
Okay.
But I'd say go to the small places first before going to Amazon, even though I know you can get it there. And it is available now. I mean, the official release date isn't till September, but people are getting it now. And I'll have a bunch of them at the book launch too.
Okay, I want to get it
back in
sooner.
the truck.
Well,
Well, thanks for listening.
oh,
Like,
thank
great
you.
audience,
Thank you.
and This is
Thank you again so
the
much.
first time I've given voice to a number of those poems, and it was a little scary. I haven't really read that much in the last few months, but I felt really safe here. So thanks, everybody.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you.
yes, we're just, yes. Thank you. Thank you 500,000 times.
Wow.
I'm going to get to hear
Just
some of your
wonderful.
poems, right?
So well, one of mine I'm going to be reading in the open mic, yes.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I want to hear some other poems now.
Yes, so before, so we'll stop recording in a moment. Those of you in the Zoom room, please stay online if you'd like to take part in the open mic. And thanks to our YouTube listeners, please tune in for our next regular Coastside Poetry event on Tuesday, September 13th, when we'll welcome East Bay poet David Rosenthal. If people could mute, that would be super. Thank you. Before we end tonight's recorded program, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of an important person in our local world, one who's been referred to as the mayor of Main Street. And some of you have met him from the days, I think, when you came to our in-person event. Last week, we lost Harpo Marx. Harpo was the owner of Cafe Society and for 3 years provided the physical venue for our pre-pandemic Coastside Poetry events. After we stop the recording and before we begin our open mic read-around, we'll invite anyone who knew Harpo to say just a few words in his memory. So thank you so much for joining us at Coastside Poetry.